So I stole my brother's couch and my brother's room because he doesn't live here anymore and he doesn't know I'm doing this. Hello and welcome back to Cuckoo for Books. My name is Salva and today I do not have a voice, but also today I'm going to be sharing what I've read in the past 3 months, so we have another reading update of what I've read in 2019. Also, for the sake of posterity, today is the day that Netflix announced its cast for Shadow and Bone and I am flipping out. I could not sleep last night. But moving on to the actual point of this video, forgive my hoarse voice, I can hear it sounds terrible. From the months of July to September, I read 7 books, which I think is a personal best this year, so that roughly comes out to about 2 books a month. There are a couple of rereads on this list, but also a bunch of brand new books that I've read, also a bunch of stinkers. If I had to make a video at the end of the year, most disappointing books of 2019, a lot of them would come from this here video. So without further ado, here are the books. The first one I read from this pile was unfortunately a very disappointing read, and it is The Dead Queen's Club by Hannah Capin, or Capin. I did not like her book at all. I don't know why in 2019 the most disappointing books I've read have been about Henry VIII and his wife, and I think it's just sort of Thanos balancing out the universe because we have Six the musical, which is an amazing musical about Henry VIII, and then we've got 2 stinkers of a book. I mentioned the other one in my previous video, Fatal Throne, and now we have The Dead Queen's Club. This is supposed to be a modern day retelling, a modern day high school retelling of Henry VIII. The author didn't know what she was doing. You couldn't tell. Was she trying to just base the characters off of them and tell her own story? Was she trying to mimic the events of history and sort of make it into a parallel thing? She would make these references. I don't get what you're trying to get at because you didn't establish it earlier in the book. She thought we had access to her outlines and to her world building and all her first drafts, and we don't. But that's how this book was written, like, oh yeah, you know the same things I do. No, you're the author. You're supposed to tell us. I just feel like the story had so much potential and she didn't know what to do with that potential. The next book I read was a better book, and I made sure that it was a better book. I took no chances, and instead I reread a really nice book and a really favorite book of mine, and it is Illuminated by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. It's an epistolary. I think that's what you call this book, but it's not written in prose, and it's instead written in the form of files found within the world. You get CCTV transcripts, interview transcripts, emails. So that's how this book is told. So I didn't know that was called an epistolary. Learn something new every day. This is set about 100 years from now, and there are 2 corporations at war, and they're intergalactic corporations, and one bombs the other's planet, and now 2 people who are our protagonists are on the run and they're on the way to uncover this huge conspiracy theory, but also there's a plague breaking out, but also there's this crazy artificial intelligence waking up, and it's just chaotic and amazing and fun, and I love it, and I love rereading this book, and I'm gonna reread Gemina really soon because my goal to myself is to read the 3rd book, which I have not yet done, before the year ends. The 3rd book on this list is also not my favorite, and I hate that I hate this. I wanted so badly to like this. You have no idea. The next disappointing read of this quarter would be Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. Oh man, I really wanted to like this book. A book set in Victorian London. I love this era. Murder mysteries, serial killers. I love those things. That sounds wrong, but I do. I love true crime podcasts, true crime documentaries. I love all that ish. But if you are a fan of true crime, you're gonna guess who the killer is by chapter 2 because it was so freaking obvious that you don't feel any sense of pride or accomplishment. You're just like, yeah, I could have told you that in chapter 2. I did not care for the protagonist. She could have died midway through. I wouldn't care. The love interest, he could have died too. He could have been the killer, I wouldn't care. I felt no emotional investment towards any of the characters, and that made me really sad. Despite all that, I will read the succeeding books, and I hate it because it's almost like it's emotionally blackmailing me into reading the sequels. The next few sequels are about Dracula and Houdini. Well, of course I have to read those and find out what the heck they're on about. I also hear from even fans of the series that the 2nd book is way better than the 1st, so I might read it, not anytime soon, definitely not within the year, probably next year. In the meantime, I really wanted to love this and I didn't, and I was so disappointed. You're gonna see a pattern emerging here where I get disappointed by a book and then I guarantee that I'm not disappointed by the next one by going somewhere familiar. And this one was a new read, but by a very familiar author, and it is Deception's Princess by Esther Freisner. But Esther Freisner writes, for me, the best historical fiction when it comes to young heroines. Her previous series are about Helen of Troy and Nefertiti and Himiko. She was a historical figure in feudal Japan, and she was a shaman, a female shaman. I just love the way she writes, and it always takes me to another place. I may have a bias at this point because I loved reading her books when I was a teenager, and now when I read it, it just transports me to a younger, more carefree, fairy tale-like mood, and that's what this book did for me. Before Ireland was a kingdom or affiliated with England, that's when this book was set. The only thing I didn't like about this book, and I feel like I should give this as a disclaimer, so if any of you want to pick this up, you'll know this going into it. The character doesn't exist. She's not a historical figure. You know, before she would write about Helen of Troy or Himiko or Nefertiti, and they're 50% fact, 50% fiction, and for this book, Princess Maeve is 100% fiction. I think she got her name from like a ballad from the time, but there's no proof that there was actually a Princess Maeve during that time period, so that was kind of like a wet balloon when I finished the book. Her writing is very old-fashioned writing, which means it's not a lot of action. It's a lot of day-to-day real-life activities. You could be 100 pages in and all Maeve has done is chase a cow, but I really like it. I think it's so serene reading her book. So far, out of the new reads for this quarter, this is my favorite. Next up for this quarter was my most anticipated read for 2019, and it is American Royals. It's upside down. Let's try that again. It's American Royals by Catherine McGee, and I have gone on and on and on and on about this book and this author, and I love her to bits. I'm not gonna do a review. I think it's just because I was overly excited reading this book that I read it as a fangirl, and I would like for myself to calm down and read it and review it as a reviewer, or else I would just be way too biased. That being said, I do have a fun video in mind that I've got planned with JM over at Book Freak Revelations, who is also planning on making his booktube debut very soon. We're cooking up something. Oh my goodness, the ending probably has one of the best YA endings I've seen in a while, or read in a while, just like whew. But this is already out. I received the ARC from Penguin Random House. Because I am a slow reader, by the time I finished it, the book was already out, and my friends who saw my posts also read it, so that's to show you how slow I am. The last two books I read for the months of July, August, and September were rereads, and they would be the Mediator books. I never shut up about these books. I read them back in the 7th grade, and I've not shut up about them in the decade since. Everyone has that series or book that they reread every now and then, and you just feel it. You're like, it's time. I miss those books. I'm gonna reread them. And this last month, that was what happened. I was like, I miss Suze. I miss Jessie. So I reread it. They are about the 16-year-old girl named Suze who moves from New York to California, and her whole life she's been able to talk to ghosts, and that's been her job. Her side job is to help all these ghosts still left on Earth move on to the next life. When she moves from New York to California, she finds a very, very, very handsome ghost in her bedroom, only she doesn't know why he's still around. He's been around for the last 150 years. He doesn't know why he's around, and the books are very serial in nature. Like they're very episodic. I don't know how you pronounce that. They almost feel like a CW TV show where it's like a murder of the week kind of thing. For the first book, she deals with a ghost of a girl from her high school, and she's like, you stole my life, you mediator, why'd you have to come in and move here from New York? And then for the second book, she doesn't know. The ghost just says, tell this person something something, and she's like, I don't know how to find this person. Every book there's a new case she has to solve, and then the overarching plot is of course the hot ghost who lives in her bedroom. And that about does it for this wrap up for the third quarter of 2019. That is a very, very long and unnecessary and boring title, so I'm probably gonna change the title of this video. That's not gonna be it. But yes, that is it for this video. You can follow me on my other bookish adventures on Twitter at Cuckoo for Books and on Instagram at Cuckoo for Books and also at Salva Villarasa. Please subscribe and I will see you guys very soon. Bye guys!